Today we're going to have some fun. We're going to play Dave Ramsey math.
A good amount of Dave Ramsey's financial advice is spot on, but sometimes his math doesn't add up.
Here's a recent example of Dave Ramsey's bad math.
Let's pretend that you saved $10,000. Let's pretend you saved $24,000, $2,000 a month, $24,000 per year for 10 years. That'd be $240,000 plus growth. It'd be $500,000.
Okay.
Okay, and
right.
you're 67, and you'd have $500,000 in a paid-for house.
Okay.
So this fellow says okay, but $2,000 a month for 10 years, how is that going to add up to $500,000?
He would have to earn over 13.4% every single year in order for it to get to $500,000. That's not realistic.
So tell us, what is a realistic number? As an investment advisor, you deal with this all the time.
For somebody that's going to be in stocks, if we look back historically, it depends what years that you pick. If you go back 40 years, maybe you can say that stocks might be closer to 10 to 12%. But if you go back 25 years, they haven't been doing that in the last 25 years. So you're more likely looking at 7 to 8% return on stocks if you're in stocks during that time. And this guy's 58 years old. He's probably not going to be 100% in stocks.
People might be asking, John, why is age such a factor in this thing?
Well, an older person is probably not going to want to be riding the stock market roller coaster quite as much as a younger person. That's the idea in most financial planning. And so as you get closer to retirement, as you get older, then you're going to have more of your portfolio allocated to bonds, which are going to earn a lesser rate of return. So the 7 to 8% return that we're hoping for in stocks over the next 10 years, this guy's probably not going to be 100% in stocks. He's probably going to have maybe 20, maybe 30, 40% of his portfolio in bonds that are earning a lower rate of return. So he's probably going to be closer to the 7% mark than he is the 8% mark. So let's say that he's going to earn 7% over the next 10 years instead of the 13.4 that Dave Ramsey is quoting. That's quite a bit less money. It's only $346,200 instead of $500,000 that he ends up with.
So something that hasn't been talked about in this whole clip is fees, management fees, and trading fees, and all those things that happen in 401ks or any investment.
True, and an average management fee on a portfolio under $1 million is around 1%. Unless you're going to manage it yourself. So that takes our 7% down to about 6%. And if he only earns 6% over the next 10 years, then he's only going to have about $327,800 10 years from now instead of not $500,000.
Well, I will say that Dave Ramsey's math might not be working out, but it does sound more exciting on the show.
Oh, it sure does. Yeah, he says you're going to end up with $500,000. And then that looks a lot more rosy than $327,800. But what's more realistic?
So let's say that this fellow only earns 7%, but he really wants $500,000 so he can take money out in retirement like Dave Ramsey promises in this clip.
If you had $500,000 in the bank at 67, or in a mutual fund at 67 and a paid-for house, that $500,000 will throw you $50,000 a year.
Right.
Without forever.
Forever? $50,000 forever?
Well, why is Dave getting so conservative here now? If he's still earning 13.4% every year, that would be $67,500 a year. But no, really, I'm being facetious. A 10% withdrawal rate. $50,000 is 10% of $500,000. That is outrageous. He's not going to be earning 13.4%. At this point, he's probably going to be earning a lot less than the 6 to 7% that we were just talking about, 6% after fees. Let's say he was still earning 6%, though. Going into his retirement years, that's only $30,000 if he's just living on the interest, not the $50,000 that Dave Ramsey is talking about. And that's being pretty liberal because he's probably not even earning 6% on the portfolio at that point.
And if he's taken the 4% that's recommended by most advisors, it's like $20,000 a year.
They used to talk about the 4% with rule, the 4% rule. You could have a portfolio. You could draw 4% of it per year as a rule of thumb. When interest rates were lower over the last decade or so, then that rate came down sometimes as low as 2%. So usually what I see when I'm working with people, somewhere between 2 and 4% tends to be a reasonable withdrawal rate. I don't know anyone using a 10% withdrawal rate.
Except Dave Ramsey's using it right on his show.
Touche.
So let's back up and let's get realistic. Let's say this person can only earn 7%, which is right in the middle of what people are saying you should expect a 401k or a Roth or that kind of investment to earn. How much money is he going to have in 10 years if he puts that $2,000 away every month, like Dave Ramsey said?
You're saying he's earning the 7%, but we still have to take out the 1% fee. Is that right?
That's correct, because there is going to be a trading fee.
Okay, so we'll go with 6%. He would have about $327,800.
That's about $170,000 less than what Dave Ramsey says. That's going into effect how much this person can take out in retirement as well.
It sure is. If we take a 4% withdrawal rate for this guy on $327,800, then he's going to be able to pull about $13,000, just over $100 per year.
And 4%, as we've been talking about, is a little bit high. It probably should be between 2 and 3% at this time.
For this guy, he's single now that he's been divorced. So he's probably going to be a little closer to the 4% level because he'll be able to be a little more aggressive. He doesn't have to make sure there's enough for a surviving spouse.
So it's interesting that he'll only have $327,000. They'll give him $13,000 a year in retirement. If this gentleman would have put that $2,000 in a participating whole life insurance policy, by the time he's 67, like Dave Ramsey's talking about here, he would have $265,000 of cash value. If he rolls that into an annuity that guarantees an income for the rest of his life, his income will be $21,000 and some odd dollars, which is, higher than what Dave Ramsey's 327 is going to get him.
And in that case, he takes no market risk.
There is zero market risk in that. It's guaranteed. And so I think of Melissa Lawson's song, What If It All Works Out? Well, if it all works out, Dave Ramsey's great. And if it doesn't, then what?
Yeah, you don't have any more options.
At 58, you've got to start looking at things that are guaranteed, not what ifs. And, even as Dave Ramsey was talking about, what if you save $10,000? What if you save $24,000? He's just shooting off the top of his head here. To me, when we're talking with a client, we need to make sure that we're understanding who that client is and the risks that they have and getting to know that person and what they need in retirement.
When we get back from the break, we're going to talk about how we would address this caller.
If infinite banking is a simple process, why does it seem so complicated? Could it be that infinite banking started out as something simple, but over time has morphed into a convoluted process of buying a policy to borrow from the policy so you can pay interest on your own money and still come out ahead? Could it be that some people selling infinite banking policies have made it seem exclusive just for the wealthy or financially savvy? Could it be that insurance terms such as modified endowment contract, 7-pay test, direct recognition, overfunding, and paid-up additions are hard to understand? We think the answer to all of these questions is yes. Infinite banking, as most people know it today, is too complicated and confusing. But it didn't used to be. That's why we've put together a binder called Infinite Banking Made Simple. It's just the essentials, no mind-bending magic or number gymnastics. Included in the binder are answers to the top commonly asked questions, like what is infinite banking, how does it work, and how much does it cost to start. We've made the binder available to you as a free digital download. Click the button to get your copy of the Infinite Banking Made Simple binder. You can also get a copy of this binder at mcpheeinsurance.com.
Not to be too hard on Dave, I understand that he's running a radio show here. It's entertainment. You can't have the time to really fully flesh out who a client is before you start giving advice. But if that person that called into Dave Ramsey had called into the McPhee Insurance, we would have got to know him. When I was trained to be a chiropractor, we were taught to treat the patient, not the symptoms. And Dave Ramsey showed often just treats the symptoms. We have to know who this person is, what his goals are, what his objectives are, what he wants to do with this inheritance, this large sum of money if he doesn't ever spend it but dies before then. We have to know what his values are. Why did he want to have a motorbike at age 58? That's one of the things that happened in this clip, that he has this expensive motorbike that Dave Ramsey takes him to task for.
What's the $20,000 vehicle?
I know you're into cars, Dave. It's not a car. It's a motorcycle. It's a Harley Davidson.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, we got to get rid of that.
I knew that was the first thing you were going to tell me to get rid of.
Yeah, it's gone.
So
If you want to save money, I mean, we can't keep doing what we've been doing. Okay, you have a $20,000. You almost owe as much on your motorcycle as you do on your house. That's weird.
Yeah.
I mean, really. So you did so good on the house and so poorly on the motorcycle. So that was a weak moment. I'm sure it's a great bike. But it's gone. It's gone. It's somebody else's great bike now.
So these are things that we would discuss and look at so that we can get to where this person wants to be, not just telling some numbers that are fictitious.
And we don't have full context on this guy, but we do know a few things about him. He is a trim carpenter. He's 58 years old, was divorced at age 50. He's making $75,000 a year. He owes $25,000 left on his house. He owes $20,000 on a motorcycle, and he has $23,000 in savings.
That's not too bad, really. Only $25,000 left on a mortgage at 58. That's pretty good.
Especially when he had to start over at 50.
And he's got enough money in his bank account that he could pay cash for that motorcycle if he wanted to. So he's not doing bad. And yet Dave Ramsey immediately tells him that bike is gone. Why? That doesn't make sense to us.
And that bike was an extra that he buys. It's not necessarily savings, but it's something that evidently he really enjoys in his life, because he says it was a really nice bike. I may not want a motorbike, but that doesn't mean that someone else shouldn't have one. And even someone trying to save money shouldn't have one. There may be a way that he can keep that motorbike while he saves for his future. So we like to look at the whole person. What's really important to them?
If we take that bike away from him, he might have to spend the same amount of money with a psychologist to go through counseling. That might be his that might be his mental therapy. I mean, I know lots of people that get out there and ride their bike just to get free from everything.
There were some good points that we liked about what Dave Ramsey did in this video. When the guy told him that he was divorced, it was almost like it was an excuse. He said, I was married to a spender. He was divorced at 50. Dave didn't focus on that. He said, well, that was 8 years ago. Why haven't you saved more money now?
I was married to a spender, and at the age of 50, got divorced, and I walked away with $0.
That was 8 years ago.
So,
why have you saved no money in the last 8 years?
That's a good point. He's been on his own for 8 years. Maybe he has done well, but Dave's not going to let him use that as an excuse. He moves right on to personal accountability. What have you done to prepare for your future?
That was a good point, but I will have to tell you that Dave Ramsey told him that prior to finding out that he had $23,000 saved.
He did.
Yeah, it's kind of like
that's going to happen when you have a radio caller calling in. You're not going to know the whole picture.
Another point that I liked is that he told him, you're going to have to use science on this one. You're not going to be able to just art your way out of this. And really, that happens when people have a financial need, a concern that they have to really look at it and decide where they're going to need to cut spending and how they're going to be saving so that they get the results they want. You've got to really focus on a plan and work the plan.
Trim carpenters are artists. They're the artist on the site. They're very precise, very detailed. He makes furniture. You've got an artist's eye. And I need you to use your business side, the science, not the art side of this discussion that we're having. Okay? You can't art your way out of this one. You got to science your way out of this one.
And the way that we would approach this if this guy called in is we would tell him to use the 10-20-70. rule, where 100% of your income, you divide it up, at least 10% you should be keeping and saving for your future. 20% is the maximum that you should be paying to creditors. And 70% is what should be the maximum that should be going to your lifestyle. And if you don't have those personal creditors, you could be saving about 30% of your income. And this is right about where Dave puts him. 30% of this guy's income is about $1,875 a month. Dave had him saving $2,000 a month. He's right in the ballpark.
Yep. And oftentimes when people start late, they've got to make up for lost time.
Oh, they sure do.
And so that really is in the ballpark. And maybe Dave wanting him to get rid of his motorbike was so that he could afford to spend more. But the guy may be able to readjust where he's making other expenditures and be able to keep that motorbike.
Yeah, the motorbike, that could be part of his lifestyle if he works it into there. That could be part of his 70%. The payment on his house, that could be part of his 70% lifestyle. If he is able to absorb those as part of the 70% of his lifestyle, well, then he's still able to save 30% without working any harder. And so that still puts him in a great situation. If we look at one thing we don't know in this situation, we don't know what his cash flow was. We don't know what his payments are going to the house, going to the motorbike. But we can estimate that it's probably about $400 a month to the motorcycle if it was a 5-year loan. We can estimate it was probably about $355 on the home mortgage if there's about 7 years left on it. Let's assume that he got the 15-year mortgage that Dave Ramsey talks about right after he was divorced. Well, he's 8 years into that. He probably has about 7 left. So we can assume, maybe he's paying $755 a month out on these things. If we look at that as percentage-wise, as his debt-to-income ratio, it's not a bad ratio. I think it came in right about 12%.
So after we would get to know this fellow and find out how dearly he loves his motorcycle and what kind of therapy it provides for him, what he wants to do with his children, because we found out that he had 3 as we listened to the rest of this presentation by Dave Ramsey. Then we've got to say, well, how can we help this fellow keep his bike? Because it's really valuable to him, and that's part of his wealth. If we get rid of that, how is that going to affect the rest of his life? Yeah. Is it going to keep him from wanting to work as hard as he wants to because he can't experience a little bit of freedom and joy right now?
If Dave Ramsey really thinks he's going to earn 13.4% on this, then why doesn't he advise him to invest everything and then a few years from now take from that investment and pay off his motorcycle? It's probably less than 13.4% return.
Well, that's kind of the way that we approach it. We'd say that life insurance policy that we talked about in the first half, if he puts that $2,000 a month into a life insurance policy, in the second year, he can borrow enough money from that policy and pay off his motorbike. Now he doesn't have a debt. But if he'll continue to keep that money,
the money he was paying towards the motorcycle,
then when he comes to be 67, he'll still have that $265,000. He can still buy that annuity. He can still have $21,000 of income from that annuity guaranteed for the rest of his life instead of the $13,000 that's probably most going to happen with the $2,000 that Dave's telling him to put in investments.
At a party, in the political arena, and in the financial space, people tend to listen to loud voices. Dave Ramsey is a loud voice in the financial space, but not all of his math is right. If you take advice from Dave, be sure that you're willing to live with the results, because ultimately you will live with the results.
At McPhee Insurance, we show you the math and the guarantees so you know what you can depend on in your financial future.
Come back next week when we're going to talk about the line that Milton Friedman said, "There's no free lunch," right here on the